obviously, Islamic jihadis murdered 1,400 Israelis in the most brutal fashion just 3 weeks ago. They also took more than 200 people as hostage, including a number of children. So this weekend, hundreds of thousands of people around the world protested and chanted, but not for the hostages. As I said, I was at the Sydney protest on Sunday where tens of thousands of people blocked Sydney traffic, chanting against the nation that's trying to free the hostages. We'll talk more about the Sydney rally in just a moment, but have a look at some of the footage from around the world. I think we've got footage here from London Bridge where they had an estimated 100,000 people protesting for Palestine against Israel. You can see the bridge there is just absolutely chockers. I think we've got more vision from Westminster, which is about, an 18-minute walk from the bridge. There's crowds there. Then we had protests in Germany. We'll show you some of that footage, where tens of thousands of people there for the third weekend in a row are now protesting against Israel. And obviously we had protests here in Sydney and in Melbourne as well. I tell you, the most interesting thing I thought about the protest in Sydney was the attempt to conflate Palestinian grievances with Indigenous Australian grievances. Obviously, there was that from the river to the sea chant, which we all understand means eradicate Israel. But a couple of times that was followed by always was, always will be Aboriginal land, which I'm sitting there thinking, who's trying to manipulate who here? But this is a dangerous conflation. Then one of the speakers got up and said, Australia is an imperialist regime. I'm thinking, well, why did you all immigrate here if that's the case? Every speaker at the Sydney rally began by acknowledging we are on Indigenous land that was never ceded. And at one point, the crowd chanted from Gadigal, that's the Indigenous name for Sydney, from Gadigal to Gaza, long live the Intifada, which basically is calling for an uprising from Sydney to Gaza. Another chant that I really liked, Liz, was Albanese, you can't hide, you're supporting genocide. Well, if you go to the World Data website, it shows that from 1990 to 2022, the Palestinian population grew from 1.98 million people to over 5 million people. It's the first genocide in history where the population actually grew.
It's absolutely exploded.
Then they chanted this one, Israel and USA, how many kids have you killed today? Now, the answer is, I don't know, but we all know this. 40 babies were murdered when terrorists broke into Israel on October 7, some of them being beheaded. But there was no mention of those babies except for one speaker who stood in front of an estimated 50,000 people in Sydney and said, no Israeli women were raped, no Israeli babies were killed, it's all fake news, we were told. And then the crowd yelled, shame, shame, at the media. We were also told, by the way, that Jesus was a Palestinian and that Benjamin Netanyahu is Hitler. So I don't know what happens at these things, but it's like the madness of crowds. It's just insane.
Disinformation is coming in strong here. That always was, always will be, has really gotten me, because that is Israel. Since 2000 BC, that is Israel. You're right. It always was and always will be Israel. And what I can't understand is, what are you people thinking? Don't you understand that to eradicate Hamas off the face of the planet is to love the Palestinian people? Hamas, their own government, is hoarding all the resources that they could give their own people, will not let them into the 5,000 kilometres of tunnels underneath Gaza, which would keep them safe. No, Hamas keeps that to themselves. They're keeping their own people up on level ground where all the bombs are going off in rightful retaliation because they don't care about their own people. The point is, Israel are the Palestinians' only hope. They are their only deliverer. They are their only saviour to set them free from this tyrannical government that does not care if their own people, the Palestinians, live or die. I cannot believe the idiocy, the ignorance, and especially when you watch the size of the crowds marching.
Yeah.
You're like, do you not understand? Hamas is their own people's oppressor, not Israel. Like...
I'm glad we've got our intrepid reporter, James Macpherson, to go and pick up on all this stuff for us. But going back to your point about this conflation between, Aboriginality and Palestine, I'll go back to the point I've made a couple of times, which is that, and you would have seen this, a lot of the people who were at that rally on Sunday have never been to Palestine in their lives.
Of course.
They were born here and they've spent their entire lives here. So Palestine is not their homeland. They don't have citizenship. They're Australian citizens. So to be trying to claim that this is in some way, my homeland is being stolen, no, you've never been there. You're not a citizen of the place. You've had all the privileges of growing up in a lovely Western nation like Australia. Now you're complaining about what's going on over there. The concept of Palestine's only existed for some 100-odd years, and then land was legally bought in the area when the British Palestine mandate ended. Then you went to war with Israel and you lost that war. And it's been going on ever since. To claim that, it's always been our land.
I tell you something that made me laugh at this march. There was the Socialist Alliance, and as they're all marching down College Street, they tried to get the Workers United will never be defeated chant going, but no one was by it.
Everyone's like, wait a minute, don't hijack our bogus cause. But this chant also in London is worth a mention. Stop arming Israel. Stop bombing Gaza. We are all Palestinian. Well, firstly, that's patently untrue. You're not Palestinian. Well, very few of you would be. And to quote former Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir, she said, if the Arabs put down their guns, the fighting will end. If Israel puts down their guns, that's the end of Israel. No one gets, when you call for a ceasefire, that is what you're calling for. The end of Israel.
Just before we move on, I've got to show you this photo. This is from a protest where someone has combined, can you believe it? This is the most idiotic thing, the pride flag and the Palestinian flag together. I don't know what they're thinking when they're doing
Chickens
that.
for KFC.
That's what they're thinking, yes.
Look,